was incorporated into that at all. Okay.
Hey, good morning.
We have a lot that still need to reconcile. We're gonna
Right. But we haven't reconciled it with the year end because there was more at year end, and that is a conversation we do need to have. So.
There's a clock on the
table because
Well, we don't, and there isn't a clock visible anymore on the screen. That's the recorder.
I'll tell you
Yeah, and I didn't bring my thing. It's 8:59.
Thank you. Nice.
Oh. Wonderful. So this, such a deal.
anyway, fresh batteries.
Lori Dillon. Yeah, Dave's wife, Lori.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Nice.
they're getting motion sites doing
I know they all kind of following the same format. So kind of like our wayfinding, having something that you see it across the communities. Very nice.
Thank you. Are you ready, Jane? Almost. Are we ready in the back, Debbie? Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, January 31st, 2024, and we'd like to welcome everyone to the board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 866-914-607#. Audio capabilities are listen only and are offered on a best effort for the public. Our meeting is also live streamed, and you can join us online by going to our website or to tctvonline.com and click on live broadcasts. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone to mute your phones. You can do this by pressing *6. Please unmute your phone when your agenda item is ready to be discussed. For those joining via computer, please unmute your microphone and turn on your camera when your agenda item is called. All others must remain muted with their cameras turned off. Thank you. Public comment. Those intending to provide public comment to the board may attend in person or email submissions to the public comments email on our website. Public comments received by 12 p.m. on Tuesday will be distributed to the board, posted online before the meeting, and become part of the public record. You may also provide public comment virtually by registering ahead of time. To register, please email public comments by 12 p.m. on the Tuesday prior to the board meeting. Public comments can also be mailed to the Board of Commissioners office at 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon, 97141. For more information on public comment options, please visit the Board of Commissioners webpage. Do we have anyone signed up in the room for public comment? Perfect, thank you. I'll invite you to the front of the room, and have a seat, please. But we're going to open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. So just a moment. Doug, will you please join us or lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so we have one non-agenda item today, and I believe we have Chip Fletcher with us this morning. Is that right?
Flicker is the legal name.
Sorry.
Everybody except teachers and my parents called me Chip.
Okay, all right, good morning. And Chip is going to talk to us about the dialysis unit here in Tillamook. And he asked if he could come and talk to the community, which we're very grateful for because there's a lot of concern about it. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, it is. It's a travesty and tragedy that is happening here. I was the director of the dialysis unit. I came out here to take that job in 2011, and I was the director of the unit until 2021. So I saw through the original owners, which was Innovative Dialysis Systems, one sale and then another sale about 6 years ago or so to U.S. Renal Care. And it's closing down, as I'm sure you know at this point, on February 22nd. And that means people, your neighbors, your friends are going to die. Through my sources, I've already learned that 2 of the patients there have informed the current FA that they will be stopping dialysis when the unit closes down. There are others with transportation issues. Excuse me, I have a little COPD. Traveling, because it looks like they're not going to be able to get spots, definitely in Lincoln City, which is DaVita down there. They already have a waiting list of patients. So that leaves Astoria, which, what's that, an hour and a half drive at least in good weather, or Forest Grove, which is here again over the coastal range, a long drive, especially in bad weather. And the time a patient spends on dialysis anyway takes out at least 5 hours of their day. And you add that drive to it, you're talking about a whole day, 3 days a week. And the stress, one of the patients there, she has such brittle bones that just the drive from here in town to the unit.
Oh, we can't talk about any patient names.
She's going to try, but the pain she has traveling that long of a distance is terrible. So this is affecting us, and going forward, it'll affect any patients in this community who lose their kidneys. The excuse that USRC is using is economics, and I know that is part of it. The dialysis industry is dominated by 3 companies, DaVita, Fresenius, and USRC, and they're in it for the profit. Pure and simple, they are looking for the profit. And at this point, I'd say, especially USRC, are putting profit ahead of patients. I tried to get USRC to look at an expansion of this unit. I think the demographics here in Tillamook would support a larger freestanding unit with a home hemodialysis program. We just didn't have the space in the basement down there at the hospital, or they wouldn't allow us the staff. We couldn't open up a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday shift. Right now, they've only got 2 nurses, the FA and another nurse running that unit. Those nurses are putting in 13 to 14 hours a day every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, sometimes longer. The one nurse who has just left, luckily, she didn't know the unit was closing, but she'd been the charge nurse there and had done most of the things like anemia management, bone and mineral management for a number of years after I left. And she left because she got a job at OHSU. Why did she leave? Because she didn't know at that time that the unit was closing. That's because the salary, the way that this company treats its staff is horrendous. She found out how much more money she's going to be making as just a regular floor nurse at OHSU and much, much better benefits. It's hard to keep a tech there. Our dialysis techs are highly trained. It's a very technical field. They have to learn a lot to dialyze these patients safely because there are so many things that can go wrong on dialysis. They found out they were making less money than the housekeepers at the hospital. That is ridiculous.
Mr. Fletcher, I'm going to interrupt you there and just say I'm very grateful that you came to us to share your concerns. We're all very concerned. And speaking for myself, I've received a lot of comments in the community from people who are concerned about what next, where they will go moving forward, and also from people's loved ones who are equally concerned. On our community updates call yesterday, we heard from the president of the hospital, Eric Swanson, and he said that the hospital, Adventist Health, of course, doesn't own the dialysis center, and they're very regretful that this is happening, and they're, of course, concerned for patients, and they are in conversation with other dialysis providers to see if another company will want to move into that space. So thank you very much for sharing your concerns with us. We share your concerns and hope that there will be another provider who's willing to come to Tillamook County and provide this essential service.
I wouldn't count on it. At this point, I think it's probably going to take some type of either state or federal intervention to assist us in some way in keeping this unit open. Particularly one of the things I asked, and I'm not that familiar with county or city government. Besides my nursing degree, I do have a bachelor's and master's in political science, but my concentration was international relations and Russia. And I don't know what the council can do, but I know you have lawyers at least on retainer. Is there some possible way we can go to court and get an injunction to keep that unit going until we can find some other alternatives for these people? I don't know, but at this point, I'm grasping at any straws we can find to save these people's lives. Because I know that besides the two have already said they're quitting dialysis, there's probably going to be at least one or two more at a minimum. And as I said, these are our friends and neighbors. They will die. There's no way we're going to be able to save these lives. We have to do something about it, and on an emergency basis. They've only got 3 weeks of dialysis left.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We appreciate your time and your comments, and we can't respond right now or speculate about what could or couldn't be done, but we're very grateful for your comments. Thank you.
Well, I just talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to everybody. I've talked to Suzanne Weber. I've talked to Javadi. I know I've talked to the editor of the Headline Herald. He will be doing an in-depth story about this next week. The only way we're going to get anything done is to have this whole community get up in arms. And it's not just Tillamook City. We dialyze patients from Netarts on down to as far as Ebo. So it's not just this city. It's this whole county and neighboring edges of the county. So, I mean, we got to do
sir.
something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's distressing. Moving on in our agenda, we'll go on to item 5, which is consideration of a purchase order and contract for goods with Power. Excuse me, one moment. I should have asked if we have any additional public comments. Okay. All right, then back to item 5, consideration of a purchase order and contract for goods with Power Auto Group for a sheriff's office vehicle purchase. Sheriff Brown.
Good morning. Excuse me. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning.
Great. So I believe I have the next 2 items, and I'd like to be able to speak to both of them just kind of lumped together. I think it might be easier.
That's fine. We'll have to vote separately, but go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
Understandable. So as you might remember, last year during the budget hearing, we forgot to attach a piece of paper that we needed, and it slipped through the cracks, and so we didn't get any vehicles as part of our budget cycle. As you can imagine, we're putting 20 to 25,000 miles on each of our patrol vehicles, so replacing those is usually happening every single year. Anywhere from 1 to 5 vehicles is generally needed. So when we missed that, there needed to be a way to kind of make up for that. There was some confusion on the funds and a bunch of conversations on where they all came from, and what it all amounts, or what it all sums up to, is where we're at today. We have a couple procedural contracts that we got to get signed. I've had lots of communication with Sean and Isabel and Rachel, and back and forth with the dealerships. But what we have is one contract for Power Auto Group, which is for a Chevy 2500, which is a 3/4 ton pickup. It's a diesel. They have it sitting on the lot, and it is not a police version vehicle, but it is a special duty vehicle. One thing I didn't know, the reason that we're getting this vehicle is to assign it to our Marine Division, and the main purpose of it is to be able to tow our boats, our search and rescue trailer. They're very heavy. Something I didn't know is our main Marine boat is 7,200 pounds. So if anybody knows anything about pulling trailers, a half-ton pickup, especially with an aluminum bed like our F-150s, pulling a 7,200 pound trailer and boat is not an easy task. So this is going to be a special duty vehicle meant to be assigned to the Marine Division for daily trips pulling that heavy boat, as well as pulling other trailers that have significant weight to it, such as our search and rescue trailer. Then the other contract would be for 2 Dodge Durangos. Those would be built. Those are police version vehicles. They are Dodge Durango Pursuits. That's Dodge's version of, say, Ford's Interceptor. It is specific for police. And the reason that I'm looking at those is there's been some disappointment with the new Ford Explorers, the Interceptors. We had one that we bought it brand new, and it's already had an engine replacement. There's been some hiccups here and there. We've always gone with Ford, so we are trying to see if the Durango Pursuits are a viable option. Price is right, in my opinion. Timing is right. we can get these vehicles ordered. We're going to assign them to areas that are not patrol while we try to, I guess you could say, test run these and make sure or find out if these vehicles are appropriate for what we need them for. The other thing that, and part of what we have to do is figure out potential for warranty work. We don't have a Dodge or a Chevy dealership, so how we're going to work out potential warranty work is one of the big questions we have to answer. And then, of course, how well the Durangos are going to perform, what the room for sitting our police officers in there, what the room is for housing people that we have to transport. There's a lot of big question marks, but we got to try those out. So opportunity and timing is really good right now to be able to do that. We can order those, and it's 90 to 100 days, 120 days, I believe, from order to being able to receive those. So we should have those by June 1st, no problem, if we can get that order in right away this week. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Sheriff.
I believe there's purchase orders attached to the contracts as well, and those will need to be approved, I believe. If Sean's in there, maybe she can speak to those a little bit better, but the contract is for us, the purchase order is for them, is my understanding.
Terrific. Sean is here, so I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. So it's nice to see that there's stuff in stock that is available to the sheriff's office, because we have had vehicles on order for 2+ years, not only for their department, but for the Parks Department, Public Works. So I think that is a bonus to the county. It's nice to hear, is this part of the Marine grant that can be charged back to that? Because that's the first time hearing it. I did wonder, given the fact that it was a $2,500, if it was being used for towing.
I don't know if it can be attached back to the Marine grant. I'd have to look back into that. I don't know what the limitations are per the contract. It is being assigned to the Marine Division. I know that they're going to cover the cost of diesel and things like that. That's part of the contract, paying for the fuel. As far as the purchase of the vehicle, that I do not know. Okay,
I wondered about that. Well, given the size, I know towing, and yeah, the boats can get kind of heavy. The other thing is, I've looked at your budget. I'm sure you've been looking at it. Yes, I think there's some room within the Sheriff's Department that can cover the cost. I would like to revisit at the budget workshops, possibly financing the other two as opposed to paying for them outright, which is what we've normally done with general fund vehicles, as that spreads the cost over a couple of years versus one hit to the general fund. I agree with Josh, there probably was some miscommunication during last budget season, and I am very happy if a dealer can promise you a delivery date, given the times that we're in right now and getting vehicles ordered. So that's something I'd like to revisit in the April budget workshops, is financing those, because there will be plenty of time to do something like that if the budget committee agrees to it.
So question. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add something to that. The initial conversations that I started having with the Durango Pursuit, the dealership that would be quoting or giving us those, was more of a prepare it for next year's budget, so I can talk about it then. Also, actually, quite honestly, the Chevy one ended up being that way. I was initially trying to get the ball rolling so that I could look at it for next year. But then it so happened that this $2,500 pickup was sitting on their lot. So it ended up working out perfect for the Chevy. And the only reason we're talking about the Durangos right now and placing that order is because they have promised it will be in before that deadline. Before we officially order it, I will confirm that again, because if they can't promise it, then I will wait until next budget year. And Sean and I briefly emailed back and forth, like if we order these and it's going to work better to spread the cost out over a couple of years, then I absolutely support that. The Chevy sitting on the lot. And I will also clarify, just in case there's any questions, why we're not going with the Ford F-250. The Chevy 2500 has front independent front suspension, which makes the ride much smoother. If you've ever ridden in a 3/4 ton pickup, they are very, very rough because they're built for strength, whereas the Chevy works a little bit harder to make that ride a little bit more comfortable. And the Sand Lake truck, that I drove years ago was a 3/4 ton Chevy, and it was very, very comfortable. So they've kind of proven themselves. That's why I'm leaning towards that as opposed to an F-250.
Well, now, that was my other question, is the last person I remember driving a 2500 vehicle was you or Zimmy down at Sand Lake, and wondered if it was possibly part of the Title III funds that, replacing the Raptor also, if it was gonna be used for that or not.
The new Chevy we have now.
The 2500.
Oh yeah, no, that's going to Marine. The Raptor that we just did the new Raptor under the Title III. So, but you are right. It was Mike Zimmerman that drove it after me, but that was the last 3/4 ton Chevy, and I think actually that was bought under Todd Anderson and Terry Huntsman when he was under sheriff. So it's been a while, but there is a reason why we went with Chevy as opposed to Ford.
So, as I said, I've reviewed the sheriff's budget. I'm sure he's reviewed it too. The 2500 pickup, it's nice to hear. Maybe it might be covered under some of the grant funds. That would be a nice offset, savings, still general funds, but still state paid for. And then the other two, talking about them at the budget committee meetings in April and possibly financing as opposed to taking one hit to the general fund.
Okay. So let me just see if I'm understanding this correctly. You support the purchase of the Chevy now, and you would like to postpone the purchase of the Dodge vehicles until the budget committee hearings?
No, I'd like him to, having a dealership being able to promise you that they're gonna give you a delivery date, you cannot hardly get that now. As I said, we've had some, I believe, 2 Parks vehicles.
Oh, for sure.
And 1 or 2 more Public Works vehicles that have been on order for 2 years or more.
Right.
So if a dealership can promise those dates and they're gonna get them in, I support moving forward with going ahead and placing the order.
Okay.
I would like the discussion at the April budget workshops of the financing versus just paying for them in one hit.
Okay. So I didn't read when you thought you could get the Dodge pickups, Josh. Is that in the packet?
I don't know if that's in the packet. The Dodge Durangos, if we order them now, they can be built and shipped to them within 90 to 120 days. That's what
okay.
they're going. 120 days is still before June 1st. So
Okay.
even at the longest, what they're saying, I will confirm that before I order. And what Sean is saying is when we order these, we're not paying for them. We're only ordering them. We don't pay for them until they get delivered.
Okay.
That gives us time to be able to discuss it in April.
Great. Okay.
And just for reference, financing is only a couple weeks,
Okay.
so.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Commissioners, questions, comments?
Thank you. I have only one, and it's a process question, and I think this was answered elsewhere, but my understanding is these are on the state contract, and that these particular dealers are part of that in terms of pricing. There they are not, then. You're shaking your head, Rachel.
Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, these are not on the state pricing, and so Sheriff Brown solicited 2 other quotes.
Okay, so it's the lowest of 3.
Correct.
And
Or
the
availability, yes.
Availability, I understand, that can trump a lot of other things, so, okay, so then I'm good with that, and then, so we've gone through the process in terms of contracting, and I understand what you're talking about this fiscal year and next, so I'm good with that, thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's good. It sounds like there's been some good thought put into how the best way is to do this. And it is wonderful that there's a vehicle on the lot. That has absolutely been really hard to do. And I know in terms of towing, my husband tows a boat and he always says, it's not the towing that's the problem. It's being able to stop if you have something lighter than the 2500 he's talking about. So, yeah, seems like a good safe way forward. And I think if it's on the lot, you have to grab it.
Great. Yeah, I agree. I'm fully supportive of this, and I'm encouraged. I'm excited for you that you found some vehicles. As you know, I'm the interim director of Parks, and so I know that Parks had ordered vehicles 2 years ago, and one of them is coming, but the others are like no one knows. So I'm encouraged by this process and that you can get some sooner. So And I support the idea of financing. I think that's a great idea.
It just spreads the cost out versus taking one initial hit to the general fund and the beginning fund balance for next year.
Right?
Well, I think this is a good time. I don't know, Sean, if you want to talk about the change quickly and how we have purchased vehicles in the past and where we are today in terms of vehicle reserve fund.
Special revenue funds purchase theirs outright. The general fund has had the vehicle reserve fund where we finance vehicles over a 3 to 5 year period. We currently still have 3 property schedules out for vehicles. Those include assessor and surveyor and sheriff vehicles. Generally try to get it so it's not, as I said, such a big hit to the general fund, beginning fund balance, ending fund balance, contingency, whatever our fund balance is in that general fund to be able to afford vehicles over time. Because as Josh says, they 25,000 miles on a vehicle. I've done it before. It takes a toll on a vehicle and it needs replaced, it needs fixed, it needs upgraded. There's all sorts of other issues that can happen with them. So the financing is nice. Yes, we do pay interest, but generally because we're government leasing, so we do get a nice break on that, which is appreciative from US Bancorp. A little plug in there for them. But it just has helped to be able to replace them in a cycle as they outlive their usefulness, or they're no longer, we're spending more to repair them than we are if we buy a new one.
And we did previously have a vehicle reserve fund that we no longer have, correct? So there's a change now that even though we're financing, those payments, instead of coming from vehicle reserve, are coming out of the department. Is that correct?
So I think they will be coming out of the department, and then if there's more than one department, say the assessor, I'm not trying to pick on Denise, she's not on there today. If the assessor decides they want a new vehicle, then yeah, it would be percentage based on the loan amount to the department. And I think that would show the department cost as opposed to coming out of vehicle reserve fund, which we never know. It's just one lump payment that doesn't show which vehicle we're paying for. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah, because we were putting it into a reserve fund before, just each year as an end-of-year transfer, and then we stopped doing that. So I think we've just heard some feedback from departments that now they're seeing the cost of that vehicle in their department, and it sounds like that's how this would show up and probably how we will go forward.
Yeah,
Although that's
a
budget committee conversation.
Exactly. I do have the 3 property schedules that are outstanding, so there will be payments still going into the vehicle reserve for those property schedules that we have outstanding that have been financed previously. So anything going forward, yes, it will be percentage based upon the loan and the amount into that department. And instead of just a transfer from the general fund to vehicle reserve, it'll be placed into the departmental budget.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
Thank you. Well, I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of a purchase order and contract for goods with Power Auto Group for a sheriff's office vehicle purchase, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. And the next?
Madam Chair, the purchase order and contract don't change if we're financing, right, Sean? Okay. So in consideration of a purchase order and contract for goods with Roberson Motors, Inc. for a sheriff's office vehicle purchase, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sheriff. Okay, moving on
Thank
to
you.
item, you're welcome. Moving on to item 7, consideration of a site-based learning affiliation agreement with Capella University for behavioral health-related degrees. With us, we have Marlene Putman, Director of Health and Human Services. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, this is an affiliation agreement. We have many with universities in the United States and even with our local community college that provides opportunities for students to learn and be supervised in a clinical setting. So Capella University, which is based in Minneapolis, I was trying to remember the location, Minnesota. This agreement is to provide supervision for a behavioral health student through our facility, with the supervisor being our behavioral health clinical manager. The agreement, like many of our affiliation agreements, lists their specific responsibilities of on-site training and supervision for students on our part, which is the county and the Health and Human Services Department, and then the responsibility of the university and their faculty liaison or supervisor for students. It's spelled out more specifically in the agreement, but they are things like regular check-ins, ensuring that the educational goals and requirements of the degree are part of the supervision we provide to supplement their education. Specifically, there's also language in the document that pertains to general liability insurance for the county when a student from the university is on site, and that's attached in Exhibit A. It spells out that a little bit more specifically, but has been reviewed by the council. So we are looking to enter into this agreement for a student that will be placed with us in the coming year from Capella University to provide supervision for behavioral health, and hopefully they'll enjoy being here and become part of our community or part of Oregon and be a behavioral health clinician.
Fabulous. Commissioners?
I think this is a great program that we use where we bring folks in and do the internship with hopes that, they will want to stay with us. We all believe the Oregon coast is the best place you could ever want to live. So hopefully in bringing them here, we can convince them that that is in fact the case, or that the community sells itself and would be able to keep somebody long-term. And in the meantime, it is still of great benefit to those who are in need of behavioral health services in our community. So I am complete support.
Great.
Well, thank you. My only question was about Capella University. I've heard that so many times over the years, and so I looked them up, and I think you're right. They're based in the Midwest, and it appears they have a particular specialty in health services among some other things, so I'm sure they're fully accredited and there's no issues there, and so I'm satisfied just from what I read. But Marlene, has Tillamook County used Capella before? It seems to me I've seen that name before on certain requests or activities.
I believe that we have had an affiliation agreement before with Capella for supervision of students. I don't know if we've had a reciprocal agreement where we contract with them for services and place someone. Not sure about that, but we have worked with them in the past, but it's been a few years now.
Okay, well, I'm comfortable with it, so yes, good thing. Let's keep moving.
Thank you. I was interested in this item because this is the story I was telling myself. I don't know if this is true or not, but what I do know is that Capella offers some online degrees. So I was imagining that this is a local person who's seeking an online degree, but they have to have a local place where they can do an internship and on-the-job training. And so I was thinking, it's amazing. It's wonderful how many online degrees are available now, but people need not only the education, they need the practical experience. And so to be able to do both, to get their degree from a remote college and to get their practical experience here is wonderful. And I think that very often when people have internships, it does increase the opportunity for them to be hired. So I think it's great. All right.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of a site-based learning affiliation agreement with Capella University for behavioral health-related degrees, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Okay. I see we have you for item 8 as well, which is consideration of amendment number 2 to agreement with Insight Medical PA for telehealth services.
Yes, we have an agreement with Insight. We've been working, we know them as Array. That's the common name that we use in the clinic. But Insight Medical Group does provide contracted virtual or telemedicine providers. So while we're looking to fill vacancies, or maybe we can't, this is another opportunity, much like you described with remote learning for education. You can also have remote support with skilled people to meet the needs of our patients. This agreement, again, was in place. We're modifying it to add a nurse practitioner, specifically a psychiatric nurse practitioner. We've been without a psychiatrist with our with the health center for over a year as that psychiatrist moved to another opportunity. So not able to find a psychiatrist, but a psychiatric nurse practitioner can perform many of those functions. It will be a remote or telemedicine service. And as described here under new services in the amendment, it's a minimum of 24 hours per week of the therapist coverage at a rate of $100 per hour. So we have to be really efficient with our use of this clinician with the rate of reimbursement that we receive. The clinician can provide services to both our Medicaid and uninsured populations, as well as private pay, as we like to say, or people who have their own insurance. So we have already identified a person that could fulfill this role and have talked and had interest views, as again, like we kind of call them to meet the person and see if they would meet both our staff's needs and fit well with our community and know the population that they'll be working with. So with all of that, this is the amendment to add the psychiatric nurse practitioner part to our agreement with Insight Medical Group.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Yeah, this is a really important contract and important add. We have many individuals in our community, Marlene, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I hope this person is also able to be a prescriber, because it feels like one of the real challenges that we have had having lost our psychiatrists is there are folks who are on medications that cannot be prescribed by anyone other than a psychiatrist, or in this case, a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And so for those individuals, much as we heard from Mr. Fletcher this morning, the challenges for folks who are on dialysis and will not have that in our community, this can also be a very, very dangerous situation for people who need medications specific to mental health issues that require a psychiatrist. If they cannot get those medications refilled, they also can have life altering and challenging situations. So for us to have someone on board and able to provide that in our community, it's just so important.
Thank you.
Thank you. My only question is this sounds like a very, very practical way forward. My question is psychiatry one of those specialties where there's simply not a critical mass in Tillamook County for someone to sustain a practice?
I think, well, if you speak with Frank Hanna Williams, who's the director at Tillamook Family Counseling Center, they also have contracts with and on-site services with psychiatrists. So I don't know that it's the critical mass issue so much as where people want to live and work and have the flexibility to work now. With the options for hybrid, meaning working on-site and then doing telemedicine, people can, I think this position, we're thinking the person lives in the Midwest or closer to the East Coast. So they can live where they grew up or where they might have a private practice and expand it by this additional option. We do have smaller numbers, you're accurate on that. It could sustain our clinic sustained a full-time psychiatrist and still had a demand. That's along with the counseling center staff. So there is a demand that we could meet. It's just, how do you do it?
Thank you.
I think this is a great opportunity. Access to specialty services is an ongoing challenge in rural communities, and psychiatric services or specialty services, as are dialysis services, to Commissioner Scar's point, and we need them here. And so if we can't bring the providers here, I think telehealth is a great option. I had, it's interesting the things that we've learned that we can do in the last several years. I wondered how telehealth would actually work for myself until I got COVID. And then I had a telehealth appointment with my provider who did not prefer for me to come to the office when I had COVID. And it worked fine. It worked fine. So I had that practical experience like, oh yeah, if you don't need an actual physical exam, this is going to work fine. And I would think that it would work fine for a talking appointment. So I think it's a good option. I'm curious about, do they have to get Oregon licensure if they're from another state?
The providers that we've worked with have dual licensure, and they work with the entity that they're, employed with. So in this case, Insight Medical. On the what's called credentialing and privileging side, we still have to go through all those processes with local insurance providers that offer services in Oregon. So they have to agree to the licensure that the individual has before they'll pay. So we have to initiate that process. But most of them will have dual licensure, or we have to work through a different process with insurance companies.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of amendment number 2 to agreement with Insight Medical PA for telehealth services, I move approval.
Second?
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you.
Okay. Treasurer Sean Blanchard has the next item, and we're also going to move up items 11 and 12 because she has all 3 of those, and then come back to 10. So just so you know.
Around 11, 12.
Okay, so item 9 is consideration of an updated local 223 Teamster Union salary schedule effective January 1st, 2024.
So last week we came before you, HR director and myself, with updated pay tables for this calendar year. We did find some errors in those. This is correcting the Teamsters one to follow the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay?
I'll
So,
be bringing others next week, probably.
okay. Commissioner.
So, thank you. I do have one question. When I read the table, not knowing the total reference, it all looked perfectly reasonable. However, when you get down to the cook and the cook assistant, they appear to have exactly the same wage scale. Would not an assistant earn somewhat less, or conversely, a cook earn somewhat more than an assistant? Was that a typo, or is it the case to where they earn the same?
It's been through 4 sets of eyes, so that would probably be a typo. We currently do not have a cook or a cook assistant. So that's something that.
So then probably for the record, it should reflect what it actually is, even though the position may not be filled. Would that be a fair statement? Okay.
4 sets of eyes, Commissioner Olson. We tried.
So do we need to pull that back and get our typo fixed? I know that the pay that we have paid in alignment with the agreement, so this is a tool that will underlie that, so.
Do you have an opinion?
Seems we should.
I would recommend that if the pay table is incorrect, that it be pulled in lieu of being able to cross-reference it with the collective bargaining agreement.
We will take a look at that again.
Okay,
Thank you, Sean.
all right. Then we won't move forward with that. We just won't make a motion. Okay, and item 11 is consideration of an order in the matter of the appointment of members to the Tillamook County Budget Committee.
We opened up a budget committee as we lost all of the budget committee members from last fiscal year. Commissioner Olson is now a commissioner, can no longer be on the budget committee. The former mayor of Manzanita, Mike Scott, thank you. I was getting the first name, couldn't get the last name, has resigned his commission, and former Commissioner Bill Bartline also resigned his commission on the budget committee. So we had interviews, very well qualified people. This is to appoint Ken Henson, who's also on the solid waste budget committee, and MJ Basti, thank you. And also Mike Weisenflue to the budget committee for fiscal year 24-25.
Thank you. Any questions?
But do we want to take these together since it's Budget Committee and Compensation Committee, and on the agenda, they're 2 separate, and I know we'll need 2 separate motions, but do we want to discuss both?
Sure.
We can normally, on the budget committee members, the 3 that are not the commissioners are also the compensation board, which reviews and gives their recommendations for the elected officials' compensation.
Okay, and those 3 individuals agreed to serve on both, so thanks to them for their willingness. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having served on the Budget Committee for a good long time, and interviewed these individuals, plus one more, I can tell you it's a labor of love, because you need to like numbers and philosophy and all, but these three that are before us today, I think, have a very good breadth of knowledge and experience. One of them, I believe, served on the Budget Committee many years ago, and also taught some financial courses at our local college. Another was a practicing nurse elsewhere, but now is in Tillamook County. And the third has been involved with county and county matters and regional items, and also the private sector for good some time. So I'm having been part of that group, both committees, for quite a number of years. I think we're making a very positive step forward, and I fully support these three, and I think they'll show up and bring the balance to the committee that we need. So I'm very much in favor of these three.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would agree with Commissioner Olson's comments. I think we have three very qualified individuals that are willing to serve. We looked at geographic diversity as well, and we have South County and Central and North, and we feel like we really have a good balance on the committee. So I am excited to appoint these folks and to get the Budget Committee fired up and ready to go.
As am I. I'm grateful to these three individuals for their willingness to serve, and also to everyone who applied, because we had a number of outstanding applicants, and we were fortunate to have a wealth of wonderful applicants. So thanks to everyone who applied. And I think we're ready for a motion.
Okay. Madam Chair, in consideration of an order in the matter of the appointment of members to the Tillamook County Budget Committee, that being Board Order 24-006, I would move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay,
you.
we're ready for the next one?
Yes, please.
Madam Chair, in consideration of Board Order Number 24-007 in the matter of the appointment of members to the Tillamook County Compensation Board, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, thank you. Now, item 10. Consideration of Tourism Advisory Committee recommendations for the 2023 to 2024 TLT Tourism-Related Facilities Community Grant. With us, we have Nan Devlin, Director of Tillamook Coast Visitors Association, and Marnie Johnson.
Hi, thank you. Well, we had quite a large number of applications this year. We had 21 altogether. 5 of those were not eligible. They did not meet the requirements of like 10-year property, or they should have probably applied for a different type of grant. But we did have 16 eligible. The Tourism Advisory Committee met in early January, and we had really good discussion. Rachel Haggerty was there as well and guided us on some questions that they had. Of course, the budget for the facilities grant this year was $400,000. Of these 16, it was $1,069,590 in requests. If you put in all of the applicants, it was 1.25 million. So it was pretty, so there's a lot of projects going on in the county, and it's exciting to see so many people, communities, towns, unincorporated areas coming together to create and go forward in the development of their communities and the enhancements. So it's great. So there's a tie, as you can see. So rated number one was the Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad. And they are in the phase 3 of their train depot museum project. They did receive other grants, one a really good one from Travel Oregon for $100,000. And that will help them complete this phase, which is the building of a water tower and many other things that go there. So, and we had a talk with her too, Rachel Aldridge, about where they were in their process, because we thought if possibly they could put off this 75,000 till next year, but this is all going to be done this year, everything that, with this grant. The Tillamook County Library Foundation, their park upgrades, I think this is their last phase, so they'll be finishing that. Sitka Center for the Arts, who did get a grant last year to upgrade all of their electrical, and they set the most beautiful pictures of their project and thank you notes and everything. This is kind of the last part of that. And it's a walkway upgrade with lighting and railings, things like that to ensure safety. City of Rockaway Beach has been doing so many things, so many projects. And this is to help fund their new playground, which is right behind City Hall, right?
In the fire department.
Yeah, in the fire department. And it's a big empty lot that had been there, and they're turning it into a playground for both visitors and the community. YMCA Bowling Alley, which the bowling alley was just purchased this last year by the YMCA, and the building is in much disrepair, and they need to start with the roof replacement. They've got a lot of work to do there, but when they're done, it'll be a great spot for entertainment. The next two had exact same points, and they were scored and ranked the very same. And Tillamook Air Museum, their entry repair after that horrible crash that just took out their whole front entrance. They tried to get as much as they could with their own money and some donations, but they have more to do, and they need that. But also the city of Manzanita, which is building a new city hall. They have taken out a loan of about $5 million, and they want to put in ADA accessible restrooms, and this will help accomplish that. And that building project is supposed to be done this year, so they're really going to work on it. Now, we did have two others that had ranked pretty high. The city of Wheeler, and it was to plan out and include some Salmonberry Trail amenities. But there is an application in process called a RAISE application it's going to be coming from the county, right, Rachel? For the whole Salmonberry Trail. I think you're asking, what, 29 million? Close to that, which would cover the costs of the whole coastal trail.
So I would clarify that won't cover the whole costs of the total coastal trail.
Just the coastal part?
Not the coastal part, a very short section that now has been identified that will likely be in Rockaway. So I do think we may need to have a little more conversation about this, but I do want to stop and be really clear for anyone who's listening that it is way more than 23 million to build the entire coastal Salmonberry Trail.
Oh, yeah. I've heard the whole Salmonberry Trail is like 100 and some million.
Thank you. Right. Yeah. Figure anyone, in case they don't listen to the rest of this, I want them to hear that part. We want to, and it's a little more than that. Thank you.
Yeah, I remember having a meeting with the STIA, and it had jumped even from then, years ago, it had jumped from like 60 million to 100 million, and it's probably more than that now. Yeah, definitely. And the City of Bay City had also applied for a signage like they have now, the four-sided kiosk, which we had paid for the rest of the city through our wayfinding program. We can pay for that, and we'll put it in our budget under wayfinding for this next year. Then, just like last year, I remember too, when Garibaldi was working on their restrooms, and they ran into huge problems, and they gathered some money, but they needed more money to finish the project. And the same thing has happened with the Tillamook Chamber build from last year. They got started, and coming from family here that has done projects, remodel projects on old homes, and I know how much that you always run into something, right? So the Chamber's building, and they ran into some major problems. And do you want to talk about that, Justin, or? Yeah, come on up.
Yeah, so just to touch base on this a little bit, we're in a little bit of a conundrum. I mean, as I stated in the letter, this is from a 2022 and 2023 grant. There's both projects. The 2023 grant, we ran into just a small issue, I feel like at this point, on the back where a wall is essentially, when we cut the concrete, we realized there's no footing under that wall. So it was on a concrete slab and is now basically supported by a 10-inch wide by probably 6-inch thick piece of concrete. And as wet water now is undermining that, and so we filled it with some gravel to try and at least make sure it doesn't slope off. So that's a small one. That was, we wouldn't know that until we cut the concrete. The biggest one, and we would have really wrote a grant for this had it came at an earlier date, is, there's been some things we've been trying to figure out how to pay for out of our pocket. But when we started the meeting room and they took the drywall off of the roof truss, it was identified that there had been a leak right above that roof truss. That roof truss was no longer something they were comfortable putting, painting. We couldn't paint it. We couldn't fix it because basically there was also a fire in the building at one point, and that roof truss was not replaced. It was coated in a smoke encapsulating primer because it didn't have structural integrity issues apparently. So we could no longer refinish that truss. So to get the roof structurally sound, and we put the best route to go is to put just a glue lam beam in there. But as that, obviously we looked at the roof. They had a couple roof companies come in, and it's quite extensive. So that leak is caused actually not right there. It's actually caused down. It's a flat roof. So it's caused down the gully a little ways. We are still in the process of trying to figure out. Everybody has said essentially, nonetheless, we're going to need a roof replacement. Like that's not really negotiable. According to that, it's like you don't really have many options here. You can do some repairs to buy you some time. But as they started adding up the repairs, it's like a third of the project. And so we're still trying to figure out, like, what are we going to be able to do? We have some reserves to put forward. I can go request some other funding too, but we need some help. And unfortunately, these are not, they're kind of immediate repairs. Since the roof leak has been identified, I find it ironic that we do have two other leaks on that same wall side that have now started to come through into the drywall of the and drip. So we had to move our printers and stuff. So it's an immediate need, and I'm kind of out of options. I was trying to, like I said, hang in there, and I knew we had some overruns. But then when this came, I kind of had to throw my hands up and say, well, where do I go? So that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
So here's what we're requesting. Last year, Bay City had received approval for a grant for the Kilchis Pathway from Bay City to Kilchis Point Reserve, and they couldn't get the match. It was a very significant match, so they canceled their approval for this and didn't take any money. So we had a $40,000 left over from last year's facilities grants. Here's what we're suggesting. So we can apply that $40,000 to this year's fund to make it a total of $436,234. That would bring in that TIDE, Tillamook Air Museum, City of Manzanita, and we'd still have 3,700, excuse me, I said that wrong. So through the Tillamook Air Museum brings to 436,234, and that would still provide $3,766 left over. So what we're asking, because the Tillamook Art Museum and the city of Manzanita tied, would the county consider adding $71,234 to fund all that are listed here? You get that? Is it Rachel? Okay, so the first one, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the first 6, which were approved by TAC, and then we realized that Tillamook or Manzanita had tied with the same scoring. If you take it through to the Tillamook Air Museum, it comes to $436,234. We had $40,000 not used from last year's facilities grants, which could be applied here, and that would have an overage of $3,766 left over that we could apply toward the city of Manzanita, which tied in scoring for restrooms. But it would need an additional $71,234 to do all of these that are listed.
And that doesn't include the chamber, correct? That does not include the 40,000 of
Separate from
it?
the chamber.
Okay, thank you.
The
Making sure I was
chamber
following
is-
the math.
The chamber is an additional request.
Okay, thank you.
And the total for the chamber is $90,000 that they need, and they're asking for 40 additional.
So I agree with the math. I was looking at it from getting there a little bit differently. So the top 5 comes to 361.
361.
Yep, comes to.
Excuse me, yeah.
Yeah, it comes to 361. And so if we just stopped there for a second and looked at the additional projects, 75 for the Air Museum, 75 for Manzanita, 40 for the chamber, that's an additional total ask of 190,
Right.
right?
No, well, they want 40, so it'd be an additional, it'd be 71,234 plus 40.
Isn't it 75 for the museum, 75 for Manzanita, and 40 for the chamber?
40 for the chamber, but we had 40 left over from last year.
Correct.
So if you apply it to that,
So it's 150.
it's,
So the total ranked projects is 361.
except that if you add the city of Manzanita, which tied, it comes to 511,234. With the additional 40 left over,
Yeah.
the only amount more that we're adding to this request is 71,234. That does not include the chamber's request for additional 40.
I think the piece that's missing the budget was 400.
Yeah. Yeah, the budget is
Yeah.
400. Yes, absolutely. Budget is 400. Original budget was 400.
Is that,
Oh, yeah, continue the conversation. Yeah.
okay. Do you have more?
No. that's
Okay, all right. And then I see we have at the bottom of your chart, the projects that were originally ranked high but have other funding available. Do you want to talk about those?
Yes, and just the city of Wheeler for the Salmonberry amenities, we had talked with Rachel during the TAC meeting and said there could be monies from the RAISE grant that could help them.
So what I want to clarify is the RAISE grant is in its draft form.
Right.
It has not yet been finalized nor submitted, but we did meet yesterday after talking with our consultant to look at the section that they would recommend that we include in the grant. It is not Wheeler. So to be clear that at this time and with the expectation of the grant, Wheeler will not likely be included in the RAISE grant.
Okay.
So I don't know if that means you would like to rework this based on what TAC has where they scored and what TAC would have recommended absent the RAISE grant.
Okay, so the other thing is that Wheeler also received a grant a year or two ago for $75,000 for a restroom, and they have not yet started that because they don't have a match.
Okay.
So that's another issue that came up in the conversation.
Okay, so you would suggest keeping Wheeler off the list based on, even knowing it's not in raise, based on the past funds that they are waiting to use?
At the TAC meeting during our discussion with Rachel, she said a priority would be projects that could be completed in that fiscal year or in the period of time of the grant. And so because they're already behind one grant, it's more likely that they'd be fine if they wait till next round and apply again, because they're not going to be ready to go, would be my opinion.
Okay. And if the city of Wheeler will not be included in that the raised grant, does that mean that the construction of the trail in Wheeler is also not a priority?
It doesn't have identified funding.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I hesitate to use priority.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but it does not have identified funding.
Yeah, and this was about identifying the amenities as well.
I know that the Salmonberry Trail Foundation is very interested in working with the city of Wheeler, and the Salmonberry Trail Foundation has prioritized that. However, it doesn't have identified funding.
Okay, okay. And item 5, the Bay City RV dump signage?
Yes, that one is, they have a new RV dump site that is really quite nice looking, and it's right off 101. And we can reuse a lot of the signage, so it won't be as much as before. And we can add that to our wayfinding request.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Do we want to ask Rachel for staff recommendations?
So again, I don't mean to belabor this, but if I'm looking at a total pot of 440, right, and we take off the top 5 projects, there's a balance of 78,766. If I add 78,766 plus the Air Museum, the Manzanita, and the Chamber, I get a total plus a total ask of 268,666 of additional request. So I'm still missing a piece, I think. Because
I think you are, Rachel. So when you look at running total, if we have 440,000 available, you get all the way through the Tillamook Air Museum before you run out of money. And you in fact have 3,776, I think is what was left that could be applied to the Manzanita bathroom.
Okay.
So the 440 will carry us all the way through Tillamook Air Museum. And I think you're having it carry us through the bowling alley. Did I hear you correctly?
No, there's still a balance, but yeah, I'll go with that.
The leftover Bay City repurposed money would just net to zero when added to the Chamber's request. So if you just leave the Chamber and Bay City out of the equation, then this right here are your totals.
Then you run out, then you get to the YMCA and you are short of the full amount needed for the Air Museum. So it depends on what you do with that 40,000, where you run out of funding on these projects.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, Madam Chair.
Please.
Thank you. That's the way I read it as well, and one thing we should note, just for the record of those who might be listening in, as general fund versus special fund, we're talking about special fund money, which means that at the end of the year, if it's not fully expended, it typically rolls over into the next year. And then it has to go through the budget process, but there's a larger beginning cash balance. Unlike a general fund, where if you don't expend it by the end of the fiscal year, you typically start over. And that's a distinction that should be drawn. That's where this 40,000 comes for. When I ran these numbers, it looked to me to be beyond the 400, and then the 440, if you take the money, it is somewhat beyond that. But given the fact there's a tie, on the numbers 6 and 6 for that position. It made sense to me to go ahead and fund that. Separately, then was the 40,000 for the chamber, and we've heard a discussion, and we can continue that. I don't have an issue with that either, because anytime you open a wall, you're taking a risk, and things happen. I would say just from the 30,000 foot level, this source of funding, which did not exist until 2014, has now put, I'm going to say, in excess of $25 million back into the county over a period of that decade. And so I have not seen a project that didn't have a strong argument for it, which means some are probably better than others. But I'm pretty comfortable with these numbers unless I hear from staff there's a compelling reason not to, and I haven't heard that yet. So that's my comments as of the moment.
So,
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, if I may?
Please.
So Rachel, I know you sent us an email and reminded us of our commitment of TLT from last year, which included some forward commitment. So the challenge that I think we're facing, if I understand correctly, is while we would like to add the 71,274 to get the city of Manzanita complete because they are tied, and that would get all of those. That's a number. And then we would need 40,000 on top of that to also fund the chamber. So the total ask becomes over 100,000. The question is, do we have it? Not whether these are worthy projects. And so, Rachel, if I understood your email correctly, we don't necessarily have 100,000 in excess TLT beyond what was already committed from last year to projects in this coming year. Can you help me detangle that? And maybe you have your email to share.
Yeah, I can't really give you a definitive answer on that because once TLT is approved and we start spending in the budget year, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of projects. And I track expenses, but I don't reconcile it with actual revenues coming in. That's a lengthy exercise that I do right now in preparation for budget season to show you updated numbers and forecasts, et cetera. So the point of my email was just to share that because of the big hit that Cape Kiwanda was taking in this fiscal year and this fiscal year, 4 allocations, including the Cape Kiwanda project, were deferred to next year. So we are already committed to 1.3 next year. I know numbers are up, but I don't know, but that's across all of what TLT funds, including roads. And so the point of the email was just to call attention, just a reminder that we do have allocations already outstanding, and that I without all of the time that takes to go through that exercise of reconciling literally where we are, I'm not able to offer you that information at this time. Can we take on an additional 78,000 or whatever the difference is? Probably, but I can't tell you exactly what that number is without going through the budget work in the next couple of weeks.
We have been tracking, we do, like Tommy Steiber shows us calendar year tracking, and we're on track for the same as last calendar year, which was around 7 point something million.
And Sean, because you're sitting here, and this is probably not a fair thing to ask, but in my mind, I am remembering from our fun report that we love from the end of the year that we ended the year with more TLT than we anticipated last year.
Correct.
And do you remember how much that was?
Off the top of my head.
I think it's 7.7 million.
Right, but I was looking at
would-
what
it
our
would be
beginning
more.
fund, what our fund balance increased
Because you
by.
go,
Because we don't, well, and because, yeah, we're on the fiscal year, not the calendar year. And that didn't all end up as adding to our fund balance because we spent some of it.
We did increase, we had a supplemental budget last fiscal year, TLT funds of 1.3 million.
Okay, so that would mean that we had 1.3 million more than anticipated last fiscal year. Which the good news about that is, very back of the envelope, we have committed 1.3 million going forward. Rachel,
But that extra amount, is that for is that gross, is that net, and is it for 111 and 121?
That was supplemental budget, increased the TLT tax 1.3 million. And then there was an increase in materials and services for the transfer. Sorry, road fund and materials and services, not.
So was the 1.3, what was the 1.3? Was it for 111
Yes,
and 121?
that was 111.
Just 111,
Specifically.
which has the transfer to 121.
Right.
And roads comes out of the 1.3?
Yes, that was it. We increased the roads transfer and materials and services due to the increased 1.3.
So 1.3, that's everything.
Okay.
That then gets distributed. So take roads off, take.
Right, so 30% of that goes to roads right off the top, and then there's some that go to other supporting pieces. So the actual amount that would have gone to this fund is less.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, I'm even gonna try to pull that math off in my head.
Yeah.
Okay,
So maybe it's more like 900,000 carrying forward.
on a 1.3 committed.
Yeah.
Right, so therein lies our challenge, is that yes, we did come out better than we thought, but we've actually already committed 1.3 forward. So the question is, how comfortable are we continuing to commit forward?
I feel confident about approving the recommended amount of 511, 234 plus 40,000 for the chamber. I feel confident about that. If we do not feel confident about that, then I think we should talk about taking off the city of Manzanita, which I would love to contribute to their ADA bathrooms. I think it's important, and I think in the both the long run and the short run, we can afford it. But we did budget this for 400,000. So
I guess, thank you. I'm comfortable with that approach as well, although I'm also betting on the good fortune, which is maybe a foolish thing to do in a public arena, but I don't see a tremendous dip over the next 6 months and end of this fiscal period that we should be able to sustain the total ask here. On the other hand, if we find ourselves somewhat less, then the budget gets reduced for next year. Now, from a cash flow perspective, some of this stuff is not going to be paid for till the next fiscal period, simply because it's only 5 months away. So I guess I would go ahead and support the whole thing, understanding that as we get into the budget season, we'll know more in 3 months than we do today, and then we'll adjust the ending cash balance, therefore the beginning cash balance, and what can be done next year. So I think we have enough flexibility in this fund. The cash flow is high enough. Worst case is a couple of these may have to be deferred, but I would support where it is today, including the 40,000 for the chamber. And I think Justin we've made him grovel a little bit here, which is always a good thing to do, and he did. But it's a very logical ask, and those of us who've ever opened a wall or something, in an older facility, you simply encounter things you have no idea that are there. So I would support going forward with the total amount, understanding that there may be some decisions made both in the budget hearings and then at the start of the fiscal period.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I think we do want to be mindful, because we used to have, this fund used to be bigger than 400,000. And as we spent ahead and as we didn't have the cash available, this is where we reduced the money in the last year. So I think just being mindful and thoughtful that we know that we are borrowing from the future, which may mean that next year, if we do not have the year we hope, which we hope we will, but if we do not have an amazing year, it might be 300,000 next year. That, there is a challenge, but having good things in front of you, it's, a bird in hand, sort of situation where we have good tourist related facilities projects that are needed now, if we're able to go ahead and do that. But mindful, to your point, Doug, that the budget hearings are coming, and we will find out what's possible for next year based on the full reconciliation that Rachel's referring to.
I do know that fourth quarter, we don't have the numbers for yet. We'll have it probably within about 10 days from Tommy. At fourth quarter calendar year, second quarter fiscal. I do know that The lodging and restaurant, because we do interviews, we try to find out, they had the best September and October ever. And during Thanksgiving weekend, every short-term rental was rented. There wasn't a single one not available. I mean, it was just crazy.
Yeah.
No, so I think calendar year fourth quarter will be very good. And in fact, because I went through, Marty and I went through the numbers, and it looks like by the end of this calendar year, since TLT started, lodging revenues will exceed $1 billion since 2014 to now.
That's amazing.
And will exceed, TLT will be closer to 56 million that has been collected. So it's going really well. And last week before, we're at ODA, the Oregon Destination Association. Justin's on the board, and I gave a presentation about our grant programs, both facilities, marketing, and also the monies that are being invested in Kiwanda Corridor Project, the fairgrounds, and for wayfinding. People were shocked that the county has done so much for the community. It was like people coming up, Travel Oregon came up to us afterwards, after the talk, and said, we look to you to see what you're doing with your money, and we try to follow suit. And I went, well, that's good. You know, people came up and asked of us to help them with our grant projects, which I found, really, really good.
We're one of the leaders in sustainable tourism.
Yes.
In the state.
That's fabulous.
Yeah. So.
Well, I am very grateful for your work, the work of Tillamook Coast Visitors Association, and also for the TAC and their work in reviewing all these grant applications and ranking them, et cetera.
It was a great conversation, and great questions were asked and discussions. It was wonderful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm encouraged because I know that we have had some concern about seeing how things shook out after COVID, because the numbers were so high during COVID. Everybody was curious about whether that was going to really fall off, and it hasn't.
No, it hasn't. Yeah, and well, it's very, we're a drive destination. People can get here pretty quickly, and travel. If you've flown on a plane and you've gone to Europe or something last year, it is incredibly expensive. What used to cost like maybe a $900 round trip is now $4,000. And families, how can they afford it? They come here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're, to your point about the Kiwanda Corridor project, there's a fabulous project going on there right now, the construction of the parking lot, that is expensive. And so that's how we got into the position of borrowing, so to speak, although we weren't actually borrowing from the future in order to pay for that project. So presumably that project will be paid for, and and then
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the everything's gone up in price. And I know when the Kiwanda Corridor project, the whole project was first estimated, it was probably half of what it is now, and it's just same with all construction.
Okay, well, thank you for your work. Thank you
Yeah.
and thanks to the committee. It's exciting to think, to your point, about everything that has been accomplished with this fund in Tillamook County. I just feel really proud of that. I think as a community, we're doing a really good job with that.
So many people and organizations have benefited. They wouldn't have had that money before. So I'm really glad. Plus, we have better roads. So.
True. Okay. Commissioners, are we ready for a motion?
I believe that we are, and I'm just going to amend it to say that it also includes the special request from the Tillamook Chamber, since I'm not certain if I just say in consideration of the TAC or advisory committee recommendations, is the chamber in that recommendation? Is that clear?
That's right. We didn't receive the request until after.
Okay, so I'm just going to amend the motion slightly if that's acceptable, and Joel can let me know if I don't meet the mark. So, Madam Chair, consideration of Tourism Advisory Committee recommendations for 2023-2024 TLT Tourism-Related Facilities Community Grant and the special request from Tillamook Chamber of Commerce. I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, and they'll all be thrilled to hear about it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here in person. Okay, moving on to item 13, consideration of change order number 1 to contract number 6478, prevailing wage rate contract for construction with Columbia Cascade Construction, Inc. for the District Attorney Office remodel project. Rachel Haggerty.
So the DA remodel is going very well. We have sheetrock drying and we're planning for painting soon, and it's looking really great in there. This is change order 1 that encompasses 3 change orders received from the contractor that we're incorporating into one document, so we don't have to keep coming before you. It has a net increase of $8,845, and it includes, they uncovered tile and brick that was covered up that they didn't anticipate that they would need to do demolition for. So it includes the additional demolition work there, as well as the subsequent repairs that were needed that they didn't think that they needed to do. And then lastly, there was a wall slated to be constructed that after the demo was completed, the district attorney decided that wall wasn't needed for their needs. And so there's a reduction of that wall. So a little bit of savings there. And then going down the district attorney's hallway before you get into their office spaces, there used to be a doorway. There used to be a door there that has trim along it, and it jogs into the larger doorway a little bit. And it was decided that that little jog and the door trim could be removed. So there's some additional demo and repair associated with that. So overall, not bad for only an increase of $8,845, given this date of this building and the amount of demo work that they're doing. So not a lot of fines, which is always great to see. So it's ready for consideration.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions?
What was the contingency on that? When you had an original number, was there a separate line item that said X dollars, or we just went forward knowing there'd be some changes?
So there was a contingency. There was a contingency in the engineering estimate. The construction bid was higher than that, so that's already gone. And then in the actual contract itself, there's never a contingency item. It's just, they're just bid items.
It is the number.
Yeah.
So the pluses and minuses are just part of working on an old building. I understand that. So,
Yeah.
And so what is the total change, plus or minus so far? Because didn't we have one a week or two ago, a change order as well? Or is this the first one?
This is the first change order to this contract.
That's on the record anyway.
Correct. There have been changes accumulating that we've given authorization to 3 of these.
Okay.
And instead of coming back before you week after week after week, I've given authorization, and then this is the paperwork catching up with that
So
all at
this
once.
is the net number as of the moment?
Yes, yes.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Good. Thank you. I'm good.
Yeah, no, it happens per our conversation regarding the chamber. Opening the wall of an old building is always a bit of a rolling of the dice. So I'm in support.
As am I. I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of change order number 1 to contract number 6478, prevailing wage rate contract for construction with Columbia Cascade Construction, Inc. for the District Attorney Office remodel project, I move approval.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. And Rachel, you have the next item, which is consideration of a grant agreement with the Oregon Business Development Department for the Shiloh Levee Rehabilitation Project number C2023775.
If it feels like you've signed this before, you kind of have. So money that we're acquiring through these state funding opportunities, there's several iterations that come before you: information forms, applications, and finally the agreement. So to summarize where we are, the funding, the $1.267 million that came through Senate Bill 5506 that Representative Javity was helping us secure, and Senator Weber, that has been fully executed. So that money is secure. This money is is a total of $400,000 coming through the state's Special Public Works Fund, and we're proposing to acquire a second round in spring of '25 that will round out the balance of the whole project. So upon your execution of this grant agreement, we will have secured $1.667 million, with the balance of 2.6 hopefully coming out of the next round of the special works funding. And so Director Lady is working on the RFP right now to solicit an engineer to get the engineering and permitting going.
That's great.
So we are moving along, and hopefully we won't see agreements for Shiloh for a while, except for the engineering contract, hopefully.
Excellent.
Perfect. This is exciting. This was just, I don't know, a little more than a year ago when we got word that the South Jetty had been funded, that we said, let's move down our list. Let's make this happen. And Rachel, you have done a ton of hard work to figure out where the funding sources are that can make this happen and to bring this forward. So thank you for all of that work. And I agree, this is very exciting. And I hope Tilda's watching and listening to know that we did hear her many times. We heard her all those years, and we're excited to be moving forward.
Truly.
My only comment, I think Tillamook means the land of many waters, which means you got to protect yourself because they rise and fall. So good for us, good for them, good for the community. Let's do it.
Agreed. And bravo, Rachel.
Okay, Madam Chair, in consideration of a grant agreement with the Oregon Business Development Department for the Shiloh Levee Rehabilitation Project number C2023775, I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. All right. Well, this is the conclusion of our agenda items other than board concerns, colleagues.
So I wanted to bring up to Mr. Fletcher's point, I believe that was the right gentleman. I was thinking about when Franz was closing its doors a few years ago, and a lot of people got very vocal with the management at Franz and said, please don't, please help. And I'm wondering if there is an opportunity for us as commissioners perhaps to at least send a letter to the folks who are pulling out for business reasons to ask them to provide another month or another 2 months as Adventist Health has the conversations they're having. Maybe we don't want to, but it just feels like having a voice in this might be beneficial.
Thank you. I would agree with Commissioner Scar. I think, and I was going to ask him a couple of questions, but maybe it wasn't the appropriate forum at the time. For example, how many cases does it make? Where's the break-even point for a private provider? Is it 12 people or 30 or 75 or whatever? And I have no idea. I do. My wife and I have a friend we've known for many years who goes in 3 times a week. And only because of that is she alive. So I appreciated what he had to say, and I think it did catch many of us off guard. And as you know, I served on that board for a number of years, and we all knew it was there, but I don't recall any significant discussions about longevity or termination or, how the way forward and what would happen if, and now we're at that point. So I would support what Commissioner Scar just said. If we sent a very business-like letter inquiring, whether we're extremely disappointed. We're speaking for 27,000 people, many of whom have this situation or know people who do, and could they extend it, let's say, for some period of time, maybe, till summer or something, until such time as Adventist can find it, which they may not, but there would be the cost of preparing the letter and a stamp. To me, that would make sense. So my 1/3 here.
I think it's perfectly reasonable to ask. We could just ask them to reconsider. To your Franz example, we could ask you, I think it's US Renal, right? We could ask them to reconsider. And certainly we could be in touch with Eric Swanson from Adventist Health to find out whether or not there's any possibility of another dialysis provider coming into that spot. So would Joel write a letter like that for us?
Joel, do you want to write a letter? I think
I can draft a letter, Madam Chair. But just to clarify, you would want it to come from the board, is that correct?
Yeah, yes.
And so do we need to take a vote today supporting that letter so that we don't have to delay it until next week this time for a vote?
That's a good idea.
Sure.
Okay. Well, Madam Chair, I would move support for a letter from the Board of Commissioners to
I think it's US Renal.
US Renal to encourage and urge them to delay or cancel the
Or
closing
reconsider.
of the dialysis center.
Yes.
And I will second that as well. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you for suggesting it. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you, Joel. Okay, other board concerns?
No, not for me right now. Thank you.
Commissioner, other board concerns?
Not at this moment, no, thank you.
All right. So announcements, there is no board briefing scheduled for today, Wednesday, January 3rd, 2024. The commissioners will attend a work session with the Committee on Vision, Mission, and Values today, Wednesday, January 31st, 2024 at 2 p.m. The work session will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 at 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 971-254-3149, conference ID 150-691-713#. And with that, we will adjourn at...
Do we have an executive session?
Okay.
So we'll recess. Sorry.
We will, thank you. We will recess this meeting at, I don't have the time.
10:30.
At 10:35, and to go into executive session under ORS. Joel, do you have it? The ORS?
I do, thank you, Madam Chair. We're going into executive session under ORS 192-660 sub 2E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions.
Thank you. Okay. This meeting is recessed.
Stream is going again.
And we're recording? Executive session is concluded at 12:04, and we're reconvening in the board meeting and adjourning